Now, with those new tab buttons added here, the next step, of course, is to make sure that once we click them, something happens. And of course, the ultimate goal is to then show different content below these buttons when they are clicked. Now for that, we can first of all go to that tab button component, because that's where we have the native button element, the built-in button element. And let's now start by adding a click event listener to this button. Now in regular JavaScript, you would typically try to select this button, for example with query selector button, and you could then add an event listener with the add event listener method, and with that you could listen to the click event, for example, and then define a function, for example such an anonymous arrow function, that should be triggered when that button is clicked. That's how you would do it in vanilla JavaScript. But of course here we are not in vanilla JavaScript. Instead here we're in a React project, and when working with React, as you learned in the first course section, we don't want to write imperative code like this. Instead we want to write declarative code. And therefore, when working with React, as a developer, we really don't want to start interacting with the DOM and with the page with code like this. Instead we want to let React do that. And therefore in React, you instead add event listeners to elements by adding a special attribute, a special prop to those elements. And I'm calling it a prop here as well, because in the end, those built-in elements are also just components that are already provided and understood by React, you could say. And the special prop we want to add here is the onClick prop. And these built-in elements support many on something props. As you can see, if you just type on and you then open this suggestion menu by pressing Control space, you will see many on props in there, which in the end allow you to listen to a broad variety of events. Now, of course, not all props here and all events make sense for all elements and all use cases, but as you can see, there is a broad variety of events you can listen to in theory, and here it's the click event, so it's the onClick prop I want to add. You can also not just add that on a button, but really on any element. I could also add this onClick prop here to the list item. Now the value for this onClick prop here, or actually for any event prop, is a function. So the value you should provide here should be a function, because you want to point at the function that should be executed when that event here occurs. And therefore here we could add such a function, and we can define this function inside of the component function, because that is something you are allowed to do in JavaScript. You can define functions inside of functions, and those inner functions will then only be callable from inside this function, which is absolutely fine here because we want to use this inner function as a value for this onClick prop here. So here we could add a function that could be called handleClick. The function name, of course, is up to you, but it is quite common to use such a name for functions that should be triggered when certain events occur. So starting with handle and then the name of the event for which this function should be triggered. This is not a must do. You could name this anything you want, but this is a convention. An alternative, which you'll also see quite a bit, is basically this way of writing it, where you have the event name first and then handler thereafter. But here I'll use handleClick, and for the moment I'll just add a console log statement in there where I console log hello world. Now we have to use this handleClick function as a value for the onClick prop. And what's really important here is that handleClick down here in line 8 must not be executed. You must not add these parentheses here. Instead, you just want to use the name of the function because you want to use the function as a value. It is the value that's passed to the onClick prop, because this function here should not be executed by you, which would be the case if you would add these parentheses, but instead it should be executed by React when a click on this button occurs, so at some point in the future. If you would add parentheses here, this function would get executed when this line of code here gets executed. And that will be the case when this overall component function gets executed, and when this JSX code here gets rendered to the screen. And that's not the point of time where this function should be executed. Instead, it should be executed when the button is clicked by React under the hood, and therefore we just use the function name here, we use the function as a value therefore, and we pass that function as a value to onClick. And with that, if you save that file, if you open your developer tools and you click on one of these buttons, you see Hello World. And you'll see that this gets printed again and again, as you can tell by this incrementing number here, whenever you click any button. So this is how you can listen to events, how you can react to events in your React projects. And this is therefore the first important step towards our goal of making this app a bit more interactive.